the intuition and the experience is just matters just as much as the scientific insights that we're bringing to the farm.
Welcome to Real Leadership, the show that cuts through the clutter to spotlight leaders who make, move, and process things in the real economy. This isn't about buzzwords or theories. It's about bold decisions, solving challenges, and the strategies driving industries that matter. I'm Jim Weaver, CEO of the Owner Group. In every episode, we get real about what it takes to turn vision into action and obstacles into opportunities. Let's go.
Welcome back to Real Leadership. Our guest today is Teddy Bekele, Chief Technology Officer of Land O'Lakes Incorporated. For more than a decade, Teddy has led a digital transformation for one of America's largest food and agricultural cooperatives. Although it's known for its dairy brand, Land O'Lakes lines of business span animal nutrition, crop inputs, consumer dairy, and on-farm sustainability, supporting the entire agricultural value chain. Teddy's path began in mechanical engineering and enterprise technology, with formative leadership roles at Ingersoll Rand before joining Land O'Lakes in 2013. Since becoming CTO in 2018, he's moved the organization from a project model to a product model and has embedded analytics across the business. The impact? Roughly $80 million in annual margin improvement, more than $100 million in cost savings, and tech-enabled programs contributing to the sequestration of 460,000 metric tons of carbon. In 2023, Forbes recognized him as its CIO Next 50. He was on the list. Outside the company, Teddy chairs Minnesota's Broadband Task Force and previously led the FCC USDA Precision Ag Connectivity Task Force, expanding broadcast access to rural America. He also serves on the Board of Trustees for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota, where he chairs the Technology and Operations Committee, and on the boards including Twin Cities, PBS, and Genesis Works. He also teaches part-time at the University of Minnesota on their digital transformation and AI. Born in Ethiopia, raised in Italy, and rooted in the U.S., Teddy brings a global lens and a deep personal connection to agriculture. Please join me in welcoming Teddy Bekele. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
You're a busy guy. That's quite a list there.
Yes, it does feel busy at times, and then there's times where you feel like you don't do enough, but I like to keep it interesting.
Well, you're an interesting guy, and Land O'Lakes is a fascinating company, so we got a lot of ground to cover. Let's start with Land O'Lakes, though. Give us a lay of the land, so to speak. Most people know your brand. I told my wife we were talking this morning, and she said, "Oh, tell them I like their butter." But you're more than that, obviously. I think $16 billion organization. So who is Land O'Lakes? What do you do in the world?
You got to thank your wife. We love her for loving our brand. We take a lot of pride in it. So it's a 103-year-old cooperative. So it's been around since the 1920s. And it started out with dairy producers coming together here in Minnesota, which is why the name is Land O'Lakes, or the land of 10,000 lakes, which is what Minnesota is. And the idea was to aggregate their milk and then turn it to have the sweet cream that gets produced from that, and not only serve the Minnesota market, but the entire Midwest, but even out east. And so they needed an entity to be able to do that while they were focused on producing the milk. So that's how it got started. And to a large extent, there's still a portion of the company that's exactly that. But obviously, over the years, it's expanded widely. And there's about 3 different divisions that we have today. One is around the dairy production itself, right? So get the milk, turn it into butter and cheese, or sell the milk in the open marketplace. And then, of course, those value-added products find themselves onto the shelf. We have an animal nutrition division, and the leading brand there is Purina. Now, most people know Purina for the dog and cat. That's owned by Nestle, but we have every other species you could think of. So from horses, chicken, cattle, dairy cows, which is the number 1 species we serve. And the goal for us is to formulate feed for these animals. And then through ranchers and animal owners. These animals get fed every single day, which is very exciting. And then there's our crop inputs division, where we buy seed, crop protection, and plant nutrition products like fertilizer and micronutrients from large manufacturers. We also have our own proprietary brands. And then we sell these products to ag retailers that are located throughout all sorts of rural communities in the United States. And they buy the seed from us, and then they sell that seed or the crop protection to the row crop farmers that they serve. These ag retailers are cooperatives themselves, so there's a structure there in which it's a farmer-led sort of organization altogether. So I went kind of backwards, but if you think about the chain itself, you start out with the seed goes into the ground. Then you have in the predominant crops being corn and soybeans. That grain then turns into the macronutrients for the feeding formulation for animals, which is why I mentioned feed earlier. And then, of course, the number one species is dairy cows. You have the dairy cows that then produce the milk, and then the milk turns into butter and cheese, and we have it at the store. So you have this end-to-end value chain, and which is why we always say we're a farmer-owned, farm-to-fork cooperative.
So farmer-owned, and I was reading up on this, and I grew up in Wisconsin, so I remember the Land O'Lakes signs out in front of these farms, and so they actually own Land O'Lakes, and I understand their percentage of ownership is based on milk production.
That's exactly right. So we actually have a board, and the board is made up of really two types of constituents. One are dairy producers. So those dairies where you saw the signs, some of those will get elected to be on the board, and that's done through a regional structure because they're all throughout the United States. The other side is going to be the ag retailers and the row crop farmers that are part of the other side of the equation. And the combination of those two entities really make up the board of Land O'Lakes. Okay. So, and to your point earlier, yes, at the end of the day, we conduct our business, and then our net income really turns into either on one end, it would be employees and their benefits. And then the other side is really the patronage for the dairy producers and the row crop farmers. And so that goes back to them, and it depends on how much business they do with us. So how much milk you produced or how many inputs you bought from us at the end of the day on a revolving cycle. And that goes back to them.
Did they join more because it's a good outlet for them to know that they can move their product, they can sell their product, and you advocate for them and those sorts of things? Or is it the money coming back? Is that a really significant stream for them, or is it all the above?
Well, it's a little bit of all the above, but I would say predominantly it's about the outlet for the milk. I mean, that is a conversation we have at every single board meeting. The other part is they also want to be part of an organization that they can identify with. So what they stand for, because a lot of times producers have options. I mean, there's depending where you are. In some cases, you don't have very many options, but in a lot of situations, you may have different cooperatives or different operations you can join, but they like what Land O'Lakes stands for. They identify with it. They like having their product on the shelves. They sort of like to have that connection. So it's exciting for them. I mean, that's why they're part of it. The patronage is almost like an added bonus at the end. Although when commodity prices, and when I say commodity price of milk, price of butter, price of cheese, price of non-fat dry milk, which we'll get into that in a little bit. When those are low, they're pretty much sometimes at a break even standpoint. So the patronage is the thing that kind of carries them across from month to month till the commodity prices rise up again.
Struggling with high turnover and burnout? Own and Flex addresses these challenges head on, offering a scalable solution with vetted part-time talent to fill staffing gaps. Own and Flex combats worker shortages and ensures your core team isn't overburdened, reducing turnover and enhancing job satisfaction. Empower your workforce and boost your success with Own and Flex. Visit ownandflex.com to learn more.
Most people don't appreciate how high-tech agriculture is becoming. It's and you're obviously on the lead edge of that. And I've seen an interview. You've described AI as potentially as revolutionary for the farm as the tractor. That's pretty revolutionary. So How is Land O'Lakes currently deploying generative AI
across the board?
Yeah.
I'll kind of walk through it maybe through the businesses and give you some examples. So our crop inputs business is the one, it's probably a little bit more advanced. And the reason being is if you looked at that model I described earlier, from going from the manufacturers where we buy seed to crop protection, then sell it to retailers and then farmers, we're like a distribution system right in the middle in an aggregated buy. But that is not adding value overall. The way we add value is through what we call agronomic insights. So it's knowing things about agriculture and how to plant the seed and how to grow it, married up with the technology. So we have these research plots across the country where we do testing on plant different types of seeds, apply different practices, do it in different environments, do it in different soil types, and we capture all that data. And then from that data, we can start to make assumptions of this type of seed works best in this soil under these conditions with these practices. And then now that has to be translated back to that ag retailer that's now working with the farmer to say, let me give you some insights on what you just bought. This is how we can get the best out of this bag and how we can maximize your productivity on your farm. And so we've digitized that over the years. We've digitized the collection of the data. We've optimized what data we collect. We've looked at the insights and said, okay, how do we deliver the right insight to the right region? And I think generative AI for us is the next unlock. We would develop these massive books before that had a lot of these findings that we would get through the years. We'd have you could also get it digitally on some sort of an app, but at the end of the day, it was left up to that agronomist, who is the person working with that farmer, to make the decision on what to do about the specific condition or these disease that we're kind of encountering at the moment. And they would refer back to the book or some of the knowledge that they had and sort of use their own expertise and experience and then make that recommendation. We're unlocking and opening up a generative AI tool where they can actually interact with those insights. So can you actually talk to the book and even explain the situation? And those agronomists in a lot of cases are like doctors for the plants. So it's almost like It's the doctor now saying, these are the symptoms I see. I think this is what's happening. And now the AI is coming back and saying, okay, if this is a situation, then this is the right dose, and these are the right ounces combined with gallons that you want to apply onto this field, or these are the practices you may want to think about recommending. Again, still rely on the ultimate plant doctor to make the recommendation, but that's how we're unlocking sort of AI and making these insights come alive for the farmers and for the retailers.
Humans are really good kind of end to end on stuff. AI is good in the middle.
Yes.
And when you're leveraging technology like that, I mean, it's so good at nuance at scale, like what it can do to enrich that middle part of analysis. That's
exactly right. And some of these tools that we're working on, I almost equate it to, I tell them a lot of times, like, it's your Iron Man suit. We're developing the Iron Man suit for you. You're in there, you're asking the questions, you know what you need to do, but you're getting all this intel, right? So you can form a better opinion about what actions to take. And so I don't think it's about job displacement at all, although sometimes that question comes up. It's not. It's about making you more effective with the recommendation you're making and more efficient with your time.
Yeah, that's a great, I love the Iron Man suit. I'm a Marvel guy, so maybe that's why I've glommed onto it, but that's a great analogy. How are you tell us more about how you're thinking about the workforce as it relates to AI and this automation revolution. Tell us over the next 5 years, how are you thinking about that?
I mean, I really have it, especially with the whole sort of flood of AI coming our way these days, right? I really put it into 4 buckets of how we are engaging the organization. So bucket 1 is personal productivity. And that's actually where I'm putting most of my effort. It's about how every person in the organization can learn to use these tools. It could be as simple as, it helps you write an email to doing more complex tasks where you have some sort of a researcher agent that helps out and gets to do some of the base research for you so you can formulate your opinions. So that's bucket 1. Bucket 2, where, we buy a whole bunch of enterprise applications, and from Salesforce to Microsoft platforms, et cetera. How can we enable the AI inside of that? Right. So as we have customer service agents, we are not going to use AI to replace the customer service agent. We're going to augment the customer service agent with AI. It's listening to the call. It's giving the agent directions on what they're allowed to do versus not. It's listening to the sentiment of the call and maybe, sort of enabling an enhanced customer experience. So that's another way of augmenting a task that's already happening. So I see that sort of in our second bucket, and we're always evaluating the next platforms with that lens. The third bucket is really around more of the advanced stuff. So this generative AI assistant for agronomists that I just talked about, I put it in there. Like, we're going to create some sort of a small language model built on top of a foundational model where it's using our data and very narrow as far as like the domain it knows. But that's the things we know. So how do we take the general knowledge and then add our little bit of insight there and create our own thing that we can give to our customers, we can give to our employees. It could be our suppliers upstream if needed. So we're working on a variety of initiatives that way. And then the fourth bucket, which is to me is still a little bit of a question mark of this, is like the true enable agents to do work, right? The idea that an individual contributor can now be a manager of digital agents. Like, I get the theory. I understand it. I think there's phenomenal opportunity there. It's going to take a while. You got to get the other three buckets, particularly that first, personal productivity, to get to that spot.
Yeah.
The person doing the job is the one that knows the job best. So if you're going to automate things, you would know where to insert an agent and do certain things for you versus another thing. So we still got a little ways to get there, but that's sort of how I think about our organization engaging with artificial intelligence.
How do you see the American farm evolving over the next 10 years?
So number one thing with and I've been in this, trying to bring digital and AI and technology to the farm for as long as I've been here, almost 14 years, right? And it's got to be part of what you do every day. It cannot be something that, hey, I'm going to get out of my way to use this thing, or I'm going to spend extra time to get something done. So, but that's true even at an employee here in the office every day, right? Mm-hmm. Like if it could be part of this workflow that I have and it helps streamline the workflow and I get better, and then I even have a chance to get maybe outside now and think of something a little more creatively, great. But if you're asking me to do something completely different than what I'm doing today, that's not going to work. So as we think about, to your question on the farm, I think there are processes we could start to automate that are cumbersome today. And if we can find that unlock, that's how we start to change agriculture at scale, right? And I do think AI is as revolutionary as the tractor, because the tractor came, we were doing everything. I mean, at that point, you were doing everything like by hand, right? And you're out in the field, and I mean, all day was spent planting this one field, and now you got a tractor. You can go from one field to 10 fields in the same day. So that's a whole lot different. Plus, I'm in the cab, as that's evolved over time. Like, it went from having to pay 100% attention to what the tractor was doing to now it's all automated in there. And I'm even checking commodity prices and a bunch of other things while I'm in the cab. So there's some exciting things happening there. But I see, even when I started 14 years ago, there's still a lot of intuition and experience used in farming today. Planting the seed. I know this field, kind of tends to behave this way depending if it's a wet year, and so I'm going to make my adjustments. Well, now I have, predictive models. I'm going to say, what if you did this? And ultimately, what is the grain that you want to sell at what price? And how can I adjust my practices throughout the season to match that? And you're getting into more planning and thinking about sort of like the year as a whole versus what's the task today. Don't get me wrong. We're not, that's more of a futuristic view where like you have this control tower or control panel and you're kind of managing everything. But I do see it going in that direction. Today, there's still a lot of like, I need to be out in the field. I need to go check on stuff. What is happening here? And there's a million things happening. So wherever you can insert some intel and help me become more productive, I'm all in, hopefully leading us to better things in the future. If you're asking me to just completely try something different and it disrupts my day, okay, I might do it for a week and then it's still going to go by the wayside next time. So
what kind of time frame do you think we're on for, robotics or physical AI being a part of the farm operation? Is that 3 years out? Is that 30 years out? Like where it's significant?
It's a great question. And it depends on how quickly. So I even have discussions with some of our retailers about like when the humanoids come in, right? So they can like unload trucks, and I mean, there's a lot of manual work.
Bale
like
hay
yeah, exactly. Like, or load the planter, and I mean, there's just physical things like that. And I think we're at least a decade plus out for that, I think, right?
Yeah,
like, because in addition to just having something like that, you also have to figure out how to manage it and make sure it's doing the right thing and all the controls. And do we even have we have not that much manpower in rural communities. Now you're adding more sophisticated manpower to manage these things. So I think that's a little bit further out. However, like there are some things that could get out. I mean, you've seen the tractor just itself get automated quite a bit, right? So it went from, hey, it can like do this row very straight, right? It's going to use GPS and satellite technology to make sure the row is straight. And that used to be a huge task for somebody who was in the cab. And now it does it. And all you have to do was get to the end of the row and you turn the machine around. Well, now it turns it's itself around, right? That's happening more and more. Or they're like the big equipment companies are starting to, they have driverless tractors, right? So like you don't really have to be in the cab. You could be somewhere else and let it go back and forth. We're still at the infancy. Like we're doing it. You can, I'm on a test plot, absolutely doable. On just a regular basis where I don't have to think about it. We're still kind of on the fringes of that. So that's starting to happen, but also little bots going around, to do scouting, like that's been talked about quite a bit. Drones used to be a big deal, and drones sort of had the hype and everybody flew it, and then they lost it. and then they drove over with the combine, and then no more drones after that. But now drones have found their place. Like they know that, whether it's a farmer that has multiple fields, so they say it makes sense for them to have a drone, or a retailer has a fleet of drones that they can use for the farmers they serve. They know which fields to go out. The drones go out. They have an operator. It doesn't fly the entire field. It might just fly the areas that through satellite images they found maybe there's some issues in growth. And so it takes pictures of that. There are drones that do application of, chemistry, but not for the entire field. Just you found that little spot that was troublesome, just spray that spot, because otherwise it'd be hard to get into the field with a piece of equipment without doing more damage. And if you got into the field, you might as well spray the whole field. So those are the things that are getting more optimized as I see it. Yeah. So little by little, we are starting to see automation happening on the farm. The difficult part and for us, and especially in row crops, is you get one shot every year. Right. It's not the manufacturing facility where you're making widgets and there's thousands of widgets getting pumped out every year. So like, let's try something for a week and see what happens.
Sure.
This is once a year, and every year it's, and no one year looks like the next year. Right? So weather's different. Conditions are different. You never know what the curveball comes at you. So what may have worked this year doesn't quite work next year. So the intuition and the experience matters just as much as the scientific insights that we're bringing to the farm.
I would imagine that your production facilities would be a nearer term schedule introducing, because it's tighter parameters, right? So tell us about the automation going on in the production space.
So the production space is a really interesting one, and even the whole end-to-end sort of value chain. And let's pick on dairy for a second. So we go and pick up the milk from the members. So you can even use optimization, and so AI in the broader term, not just necessarily generative AI, but even base machine learning models, narrow models, right? How do you optimize your route? Like which farmer are you going to go, which dairy operation you're going to go see first, second, and third? And it's not just route optimization from where's the truck going to cover the least amount of miles, because obviously there's a sustainability play there, but also like the dairies vary in size. So this one farmer has 1,000 dairy cows. This other one has 200. So how much milk are they going to have? Do you have to go back again in the middle of the day or towards the end of the day and pick up again? So there's an optimization factor just there to get the milk from the farmer to our facilities. Now, the dairy producer themselves, they have tanks with sensors on them, which can impact and give us some insight about how to continue to optimize that route. They have robotic milkers in a lot of cases. So, like that's another area where there's not a lot of labor or available to come and milk the cows. So a lot of them are implementing robotic milkers, and it's fascinating to see how you take a cow through it a couple of times and they just know. And even the feed bunks. So a lot of them are starting to implement collars that starts to recognize the cow individually. And so it unlocks the feed bunk. And then now as a herd, you can start to say, what is the mix of carbs and proteins and supplements and fat that we need to put in for an optimal production of milk, right? And so a lot of that is happening. Some of them are putting cameras in the barn so they can see the movement of the cows, and when they stray away from the movements, and then something's up. So that may be a way to isolate one and go down. So all that's happening from sort of that automation of the and use of AI through that process. But now it gets down to our creameries and now the processing facilities, and now we have to figure out, okay, the first thing that happens from the milk is we have to separate out the fat from the protein. And you do that essentially, you can do that today at home. If you take whole milk, and especially right off, and you shake it really hard, it separates. So we have big equipment that does that. And then the cream or the fat is what gets used with to make butter that you find at the store. Add a little bit of salt if you unsalted, not much more happens to that. It gets frozen and then broken up into blocks, and then it goes out to the stores. What's left is what's interesting, because now you have essentially liquids and proteins. You evaporate it, and then you have what we call non-fat dry milk, so which is milk powder. For every pound of butter that's created, there's 2 pounds of powder. That's the output of it. What do you do with the powder? Well, it goes to companies like PepsiCo and Nestle and Mars and Hershey's. So when you eat chocolates of milk, bars of milk chocolate, the milk aspect is the non-fat dry milk powder that's in there. When you eat Cheetos, the dusting on the Cheetos is all Land O'Lakes non-fat dry milk infused with cheese. And that's what goes on we send it to PepsiCo, and then they spray it onto the chips, and that's what we eat every day. So we have a lot of that. But where AI comes into play into this process is, so obviously the biggest products are butter and cheese, but the consumption of butter and cheese happens during Thanksgiving and Christmas. We're in the thick of it now, right? This time of the year. This is where we gear up. And I mean, there's anywhere from 40 to 50% of the business happens in this last quarter. Wow. When you talk about the cows, though, they're not producing milk. It's not like, hey, fourth quarter came. It's time to go. Time to eat more and time to produce more milk. That's not how that works. They produce milk as it goes. So we have this optimization problem of when do we bring in, how much milk do we bring in? What do we tell the producers? What to produce at different times of the year? How much do we sell in the open marketplace? What's the optimization from price at which we sell it versus what we're going to use to produce the products we want? If we produce it, how long is the shelf life? We also think about the shelf life in the stores. So that's a large optimization model that we do a lot of simulations and try to optimize that process itself. And a lot of that is fed by, like I said, sensors at the farm gate, sensors on the trucks, sensors in the manufacturing facilities as well.
Quite an operation.
Yeah.
Tell us about True Carbon. I mentioned it in the intro.
Yep. How
you guys have captured or sequestered 460,000 metric tons of carbon. That's a lot.
That's a lot. And we're actually over 1 million metric tons now, I think, from when that state came. Yeah. So it's doubled. So that all has to do, again, when we look at sustainability, there's sustainability in each of our businesses, and then there's sustainability across. Because of that value chain view, with equipment moving and stuff being transferred, we think about it as a whole. But even more interesting sometimes is you go deep into a given one of our business units, right? And let's take crop inputs. And that's where you work with the row crop farmers. And at the end of the day, what we tell them is, look, we've got all these great insights for you as far as what to plant, when to plant, where to plant it, how to manage it as it grows. And part of that insight is, there's ways to not to reduce the carbon emissions. The tillage practices that you employ, if you do go to a strip till or a no-till type of an approach, you're not disturbing the earth because you put all those, you put fertilizer down, and that's to kind of create this rich organic matter in the soil. The minute you turn it over, that carbon gets exposed and it's back out into the atmosphere. So if you don't do that and you keep it into the ground, there are ways to manage its crop throughout the year that helps you get to the same yield, but without having that emission happening. Same way, if in the winter times, now that a lot of them have done their harvest and, sort of the field is sort of ready for next year, so it's going to go dormant for a while. Well, depending on the geography you're in, you could plant cover crops, which is like grass, for example, right? What that does is, throughout the winter months and then in the spring, when it rains, the rain comes into the soil, and if the soil starts to like leach and go into the waterways, like you're going to lose more and more nutrients from that rich nutrient in the soil. If you have grass, like it'll keep it there. It's the same as if you and I just picked up a chunk of soil in our hands that's wet, it's going to go through your hands. But if you pick it up with grass in it, like it doesn't stick to it. So we encourage them to do that. And so by doing so, they are actually, you look at their emissions prior to using their conventional methods to now the more like updated methodology that we give them. And there's a significant decrease in carbon.
Don't they have to till the soil eventually?
No, you can actually manage it as long as you manage it properly and you use new techniques and you have the right equipment. You never have to disturb the earth itself, right? So, or slightly sometimes, we just get to that strip till type of a methodology.
Sorry, finish your thought.
Absolutely. But that's just it, right? So it's telling somebody this is what happens, and of course you got to convince them. Let's do it on 2 fields this year. See what happens. If you're happy, then go through all your 30 fields next year. But of course, there's a little bit more work involved there to do that. If you're planting cover crops, the act of buying the cover crop and even planting it is extra work. So that costs money. So how do you recoup that? Is you can actually, if you can document, now this is where technology comes into play as well, because document, we're talking about using a system to generate what you should do and then put the steps you put it into the system and then verify at the end. You can show the carbon reduction from the conventional year to the updated year. And that delta is the carbon credits that you've generated. And those carbon credits can be sold in the marketplace as in a form of currency. So it's a way to tell them like, yes, there's extra work and cost involved, but you don't have to be upside down on this. There's a way for you to stay whole or even have a more profitable operation by doing so. And so that's the work we've been doing with them. And by doing that, that's how we've been able to sequester all that carbon.
Wow. That's really cool. Okay, let's take a left turn, abrupt left turn. Sorry. Let's go back. I want to get into your origin story. So you didn't grow up in America's heartland. Your agricultural roots are in Ethiopia. Walk us through your journey from growing up or early childhood in Ethiopia to being a executive with a huge dairy co-op in the U.S. Just give us that origin story.
Yeah, which is interesting because now the story seems like it connects. It did not for a very long time. But so I was born, my dad actually farmed. So he farmed 400 in the late 70s, 400 acres of corn, wheat, and cotton. And originally he was an agronomist to start with. See, I didn't even know what that meant when I was younger. But he had gone to school learn agronomy, so the science of agriculture. And the government gave him a 10-acre plot to be able to put his practices into action. And then what he learns from there, go teach other farmers that lesson. He did that and then eventually bought his own land and gave the 10 acres back. And that's what he did. Now, the dictator took over in the late 70s as well. And then the situation got worse, especially we got to the early 80s. The land got nationalized. And so the farmers lost their lands overnight. Wow. And so like my
and of
father,
course, the Ethiopian famine was,
it all started after that. Oh, yeah, nobody's farming now, right? So nobody's farming. Or if you farmed it for the government, which means you didn't get anything, which most people got out of it. Famine got started, all the things. When people get hungry, everything goes south. So at that moment, that's also when my grandfather, who was Italian and had lived in in Ethiopia for 40 years, moved back to Italy. And then after a couple of years in the early 80s, we all then moved to Italy as well. So that's when I moved there when I was, almost first, second grade. And then I was there through all my years through junior year in high school. My father, he wanted to stay in agriculture. So he opened up a import-export business in Ethiopia, but then worked out of Europe. So he would buy chemistry and equipment, ag equipment from Europe. So from companies like Fiat, which is eventually CNH now, Case New Holland, or companies like Bayer, like in Germany, and then would import those products into Ethiopia or other parts, Eastern Africa, so Tanzania, Kenya, Sudan. And that's what he did when I was growing up, kind of the early years.
Yeah.
And eventually what happened was he got tired of the Ethiopian or this African corruption at the time with all the things that were going wrong, combined with the bureaucracy of shipping things into the continent. So he lost a lot of big deals. And he just went through lots of ups and downs. And the 80s were not really, the great years for agriculture, where commodity prices were depressed. Yeah. And so eventually he said, I want to move to the United States and give my children a better opportunity, but at the same time, get a chance to work with US based companies. And so we moved to North Carolina, where Bayer's headquarters was in North America. Mm-hmm. And that's where I finished my last year of high school and then went to college at North Carolina State. I remember having this conversation with my father about what I was going to do after graduating high school. And, I remember this conversation because it was on my, so what are you going to do? And I thought I have an interest. And he was like, no, this was a rhetorical question. Like, here's the things, here are the things you will not do. You're not going to get into music. Because he's like, you're not very good, and I don't see a future in that.
What'd you play?
I was dabbling with the piano a little bit and stuff, and you thought you were going to do something, but it was nothing there. And then the other part is you will not get into agriculture.
Wow.
Right? He just said, look, the reason I went through all of this was so you could go do something else. So go be a doctor if you want to, go be an engineer, go be a lawyer, even if you didn't love that. But he said, that's maybe something you should think about. And, I took it to heart. I'm like, I saw what you have been going through. And obviously, I was there helping him with a lot of things. I'm like, there is no way I'm getting into agriculture. Yeah. So, left that, went into good school for mechanical engineering, loved cars and everything about building cars, but got into thermodynamics and power plants and everything else. And then right as I was about to graduate, the .com happened. And so really loved technology and software. So got into that a bit more and came to work for Ingersoll Rand, which was looking for folks that had engineering background, but had an interest in getting into different, disciplines like supply chain, maybe information technology if you wanted to, et cetera. Thought it was kind of right up my alley. So joined that company and it was great. Like I actually got a chance to, after a couple of stints in manufacturing and supply chain, got into IT. And it was like the best place, right? The internet was just happening. And so learned quite a bit there and coming at it more from an application standpoint. So, spent almost 14 years there doing a variety of different roles. And then finally, this opportunity came up with Land O'Lakes, and I remember them going, "We are way more than butter. Okay, we're butter. We love our butter. We stand for that. But we are more so that we're a big agricultural company, a big agricultural cooperative. Like it was going to sell me on that, right? And I remember going, "Okay, you're in Minnesota, which is super cold, and you do agriculture, which I vowed not to get into that. Had the discussions, and just kind of coming back to home, and I loved it, and it has been that way for the last almost 14 years. Love every minute of it." Love applying technology to agriculture as we have the discussions on a variety of things we do today. So that's how I'm here.
How do you think that is your path? It's a unique path, your childhood lessons, what you saw, your family. How has that shaped you as a leader, you think?
Number one, it's one of the reasons I came here to Land O'Lakes is because I look for that resilient culture, right? Something where times could be bad and they do get bad, right? But we're gonna make it. We'll survive through this because we have seen a bunch of things before, and we survive through it through innovation. Like we're gonna look for new things to do. We're gonna look for new ways to approach work and our market every day. And I just that came through, right? So this family-oriented culture with innovation at its core was something that I'm like, oh man, like this is me 100%. And that was my father as well, right? And one thing I didn't mention, he passed away after my freshman year in college. So
I'm sorry.
He had pancreatic cancer. So for me, part of it is like just the way he was resilient and innovative. And I can't even imagine being like sort of your own business, like working internationally, but just seeing how entrepreneurial he was and moving his family around countries, giving us different opportunities, exposing us to a lot of different experiences. That's core for me. And I saw that here at Land O'Lakes. And so really shaping how I think about the work we do and how we treat our employees and how we create this sort of family style culture, but still be edgy, right?
Workforce participation rates are at an all-time low in the U.S. This is a tragic waste of our nation's most valuable resource, its people. On top of this, we are seeing high school seniors across numerous high schools collect their diplomas and essentially walk off the graduation stage into unemployment. This divide is growing. To bridge this gap, Onan is working with high schools, business alliances, and employer champions to scale Ready to Work. Ready to Work powered by Onan builds career pathways for high school seniors looking to enter the workforce after graduation. So if you're an employer or community partner looking to shape the future labor pool, this is your opportunity. Learn how you can join this effort by visiting readytowork.org.
How do you think about showing up as a leader that folks want to follow?
Well, the answer is the answer to that is in the question itself, right? How do you become you need to be the leader that people want to follow, right? Mm. And they follow not because you tell them to, but because they want to. And so a lot of it is showing up every day, right? It's treating people with the respect that they deserve. I don't believe in big hierarchies, right? So I do a lot of one-on-ones with everybody in the organization as much as I can. I tell them my door is open, but of course not many people take me up on that, but I will tap them and have one-on-ones with them. It helps me sort of get the pulse of the organization. It helps me formulate what the vision might be. And a lot of times I believe like people, I mean, it's kind of leading from behind, right? Like people should do the work. They come up, they're the experts in the space. They do this every day. How do you give them a vision walk towards, and then encourage them to go that way and bring the best out of them, right? That style of like, how do I bring the best out of you? And then the key is to create the harmony on the team. I think about that a lot, right? Like you have different skill sets, different personalities. How do you bring that all together so the team performs at its best and they feel good about being on the team? So that's a little bit of the philosophy I follow.
Leading based on title. Title is borrowed power.
Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean? And it's impossible. You talk with people about things being out of their control or whatever. And I'm just like, man, nothing's really in our control as leaders. It's not. You can't, unless you just, it's a small, you got a team of 3, maybe you can control that. But beyond that, it's challenging. I would imagine it's particularly challenging. Like you are the CTO of that is a democracy.
Yeah,
your organization.
That's exactly right. Every voice matters in a way, right? Yeah. Like you have to listen to every voice and you have to address you might not do what every voice tells you, but you have to address every voice. Yeah. So it puts you in that situation, but you're right. You can't control it, right? People do what they want to do at the end of the day. And if you tightly control it, the problem is when things go wrong, they just look at you and go, well, you told me to do this, so what now, right? And I'm like, well, no, I think you're supposed to come up with that. But so they have to own it. You have to own, sort of the direction you go into.
When you look at your team, your most tenured employees, why do you think they stick around at Land O'Lakes?
That's a great question. I think about it every day, but I think the answer is the purpose of the organization and then the culture you create here. Those are the two things, right? At the end of the day, the work is exciting. It's fun. There's a lot of cool things we do with tech. There's a lot of grunt work that happens as well that go along with that, right? But I don't think it's the work it's the work itself and the paycheck. That's not what keeps them here. It's the having purpose. So you're serving, this idea that we are, we're in the core of food production. We're in the core of feed production for animals. We're also in fiber and fuel, right? I mean, what we do matters as a backbone of this country. And that we are there to enable, support, and drive, in some cases, the farmers that are owners of this cooperative structure. So people feel a sense of like, I am making a difference in the world by doing the work that I do. I truly believe folks have that. And again, part of my job is to make sure that they feel that. So I think it's the purpose. And then you got to have fun with the people you work with here, right? It's got to feel like it is your family away from your family. So you can spend a good amount of time with the people here, whether it's virtually or in person. And so you got to feel like I like being around Jim, man. It's great. I have a great time. I like seeing him every morning. Like if you feel that way, and if you feel that way about your manager as well, then it's like, this is, I found my sweet spot.
Yeah. We're going to do the time. We're going to spend a lot of time at work. we might as well have fun. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, sometimes work is hard, or you wouldn't, you do it for free otherwise. But yeah, I'm with you. I think fun is the secret sauce. It's it creates a dynamic that's more creative too.
It is, and even when the work is hard, if you're doing it with somebody else, it makes it so much easier, right? Even think about the hardest task you have to do. It's harder when you're sitting there by yourself. But if somebody's like, okay, we're in it, let's do this together.
Yeah.
Like it just becomes like less of a burden. So
looking back, what advice would you give your 30-year-old self? We have a lot of young people that listen to this podcast that are coming up in the real economy. So what advice would you give your 30-year-old self?
As I've grown over the years and being more and more in this role, I have learned to talk more. I'm an introvert by nature. Of course, I'm an engineer that went into IT. Like I'm going to, naturally going to be an introvert, right? I recharge by being by myself, and I have no issue spending a lot of time just me, right? But I have learned how to be more expressive, sort of talk and being with a crowd of people. And over the years now, I've talked more and more. And so I would love even now, and I would tell myself at 30 years old, is like listen more, right? But not just listen, because that part is like not talking is easy, but listening is different, right? But listen and engage authentically. If I'm talking to a person and I'm listening to what they have to say, am I really engaged in this conversation? Am I committed to it? So I'm really finding out what they're saying. I'm really finding out more about them. I'm asking the good questions. And man, if I had gone back and said, if you just practice that skill more and more, even before 30, it will serve you so much more in the future in figuring out how to find common grounds with people, right? To build upon a relationship on that, figure out what really matters to people. So at the end of the day, if you're in a situation where you have to influence, like you're not influencing in a bad way, but you're like doing it in a way that is constructive for both of you. There's a lot of good that can come with that. So that's one thing I would tell myself.
I think it's hard when you're young. I did the same thing where I feel like I had to prove myself. So asking questions would kind of be, really listening.
Yeah.
I had an agenda, I was just trying to dig out of debt and blah, blah, blah. But man, yeah, that's, that whole curiosity piece, truly engaging. It really is critical. So I'd amen that, man.
Even at network, we do a lot of networking, right? Like, and even have to remind myself today, I'm like, I get in there and I'm like, okay, small talk's fine because you got to get started somewhere. Mm-hmm. But how do I honestly get authentically engaged into this conversation? Because, you never know who you talk to and how that's going to come back later when they remember you and they remember how you made them feel, right? Mm-hmm. When you're in that comment, make them feel like they were heard. And the only way you do that is if you authentically are listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. That's a good spot to land. We'll put this in the show notes, but what's the best way for folks to connect with you, learn more about Land O'Lakes? What do you think? Yeah.
So to find out more about Land O'Lakes and who we are, it's landolakes.inc.com. So INC after landolakes.com. If you just go to landolakes.com, you should go there too. You will find all sorts of recipes on how to use our butter to make all sorts of creative things. So please do that. But to find out more about Land O'Lakes Inc., our organization, the business units that we talked about earlier, it would be landolakes.inc.com.
And you have a pretty rich LinkedIn profile. You have a lot of good content out there.
I do. Please connect on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with everyone. I try to post as many things as I find interesting out there. Yeah. There's a lot of good leaders, and that's where a lot of leadership lessons I get are from things I see there. So yeah, please connect there as well.
Very good. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Teddy. It's been fun, folks. We appreciate you listening in. Until next time, keep it real.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is powered by Onin, the staffing partner delivering real results for manufacturing, logistics, and food processing companies nationwide. To learn more, visit www.oningroup.com. Until next time, keep it real.